Hey, I'm Jasmine, and I have the strictest parents in the world. Whenever I got less than an A, I was severely punished. Weekends were the worst. They'd make me sit and study for 15 hours straight. My back often hurt from sitting for so long, but my parents wanted me to get top grades so I could go to an Ivy League university someday. When I got my ninth grade report card, I had an A+ in every single subject. My parents were very proud, so I asked them if I could take a break from studying and meet with some of my friends. I thought I had earned a reward, but my dad said, "No, you first have to finish high school and then graduate university. Afterward, you can have fun." But I was sick of being the obedient daughter and snuck out through my window to watch a movie at my friend Allison's house. It was great to go out for once, especially because Allison's brother, Conan, was there too. He was really cute, and I ended up talking to him for hours. Before I left to go home, he gave me his number. After that, I couldn't stop thinking about him. We met in secret a couple times each week, and we had so much fun. One day, he even snuck into my room, and that's when it happened. We went all the way, and unfortunately, our protection broke. I wasn't worried though, because I went to the pharmacy and bought the morning after pill. I thought I'd be okay. But then 3 months later, I missed my period and took a pregnancy test that came out positive. I was so scared. I didn't know how my parents would react if they knew their teen daughter was going to be a mom. So I didn't tell them. Instead, I started eating more food to gain weight, so they wouldn't notice my belly growing. I'd always been a bit chubby, but now I was getting seriously overweight. My parents called me fat and lazy, and even Conan told me I should lose weight, or he'd stop seeing me. It was horrible, but still 10 times better than my dad knowing I was pregnant. I didn't even tell Conan about the baby until my water broke during chemistry class. I took an Uber to the hospital and called him from there. He came immediately, and I apologized for not telling him earlier. Conan was very understanding, so I asked him to call my parents and tell them about the baby. I was so nervous when he said, "Hey, I'm Conan, and I'm your daughter's boyfriend. She's at the hospital and just about to have a baby. She really needs you for your support." I'd never been more frightened. It took 2 hours for my parents to come, and when they walked into the delivery room, my dad was carrying 2 suitcases. He screamed at me, "You've brought shame onto our family. You are a disgrace." I was sobbing my eyes out, but Dad put his face up close to mine and hissed, "Don't ever come back to our house. We don't ever want to see you again." I thought Mom would support me, but she just left with my dad. I was devastated, but Conan hugged me and said I shouldn't worry. I could come live with him. We called our daughter Olivia. She was so cute, and we moved into Conan's home. I hoped we'd be a happy family, but it was impossible. His mother seriously resented me and Olivia. She said I destroyed her son's future. I did my best to ignore her, but whenever she screamed at me, Olivia started crying and it broke my heart. I spent most of the time taking Olivia to the park so I could avoid Conan's mom. It wasn't easy being out for hours with a baby. I felt so alone. Conan continued going to school and claimed he had too much homework to do to help with our baby. I was overwhelmed and very angry at my parents. Why couldn't they support me? Then I could have at least gone back to school. I also tried to convince Conan to get a job so we could afford diapers, but he was too lazy. And a month after I moved in, he sent me an SMS saying, "This is the hardest decision I ever made, but I'm not ready to be a father. You should have gotten an abortion, but you didn't. So the baby's your responsibility. I'm moving in with my uncle in Florida so I can start a new life. I'm sorry. I wish you and your baby the best of luck." I really thought things couldn't get worse, but his mom blamed me for Conan moving away. When she heard he'd left, she screamed at me for hours, then kicked me out in the middle of the night. It was cold, and I had no money for a hotel. Because I had nowhere else to go, I went back to my parents' house. I rang the bell and my father answered the door. I said, "Dad, I've got nowhere to live and no money. We need help." He just looked at me like I was dirt, then slammed the door in my face. What could I do? I didn't know where to go, and Olivia needed diapers and food. I decided to break in through the window to my old room. After all, my parents never knew that's how I snuck out to meet Conan. When I got into my old room, I started crying. My parents had thrown out all of my things. My room was completely empty, not even a bed to sleep in. I tiptoed in the living room. I knew Dad kept a piggy bank there, and I managed to find a few $100s. I also took another $50 from his wallet. After I got outside again, I used my smartphone to find a woman's shelter. But it wasn't what I expected. Most of the women had drug problems. And during my second night there, someone stole the money I'd taken from my dad. It was tough, but I realized I had it better than most of those girls. Many had mental disorders or substance problems. I knew I didn't belong there. I was well educated and hardworking. There was no way I was going to let Olivia grow up in an environment like this. I knew I had to get a job. But who'd take care of my baby? Well, I made friends with a girl called Sarah at the shelter. She also had a little girl, and told me how she'd grown up going from one foster family to the next. Most of them treated her very badly, and when she was 15, her boyfriend convinced her to rob a kiosk with him. She got caught and put into a youth detention facility for 6 months. When she got out, she started seeing the same guy again and got pregnant. But when she said she didn't want to commit any more crimes because of the baby, he dumped her. I could see she was a really good mom. So I asked her if she wanted to share an apartment with me. I'd get a job and she'd look after the babies. She immediately said yes, and I quickly found a job as a barista. I couldn't complain, even though I was only paid $1,500 a month, which wasn't much to pay all the bills for 2 babies and adults in the U.S. But because I worked really hard, they promoted me to assistant manager within a few months. Suddenly, I was making $2,000 a month, working 40 hours a week. But then Sarah became a problem. She was always asking for more and more money. I started to suspect she was an addict. When I asked her, though, she denied it, but she really didn't look healthy. One day, when I got home from work, no one was there. I started to worry and called Sarah. I said, "Hey, where are you guys?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "Can you give me $300? Meet me at the park with the money, and you'll get your daughter back." I said, "Of course, I'll be there in 30 minutes. I didn't have $300, so I had to overdraft my bank account. I didn't want to think about what would happen if I didn't give Sarah the money. She gave me back my daughter when I gave her the cash, but there was no way I could live with Sarah anymore. I found a new apartment and applied for a loan to help with childcare. I had a stable income now, so the bank gave me $10,000. It was enough to put my daughter into kindergarten. Suddenly, I was working 9 to 5, and I enrolled myself in an online university too. I'd pick my daughter up after work and then spend 4 hours every evening studying coding. I gotta admit, it wasn't fun, but the work ethic my parents taught me really helped. And after just 1 year of study, I got a job offer at a small software company. Now I'm making $40,000 a year, even though I'm only 17. I also met a guy at work. He was 22, and I thought he was awesome. At first, I didn't tell him about my daughter. I was ashamed of myself for being a single teen mom. But he seemed so sweet that when he asked me out for coffee, I decided I first had to tell him about my daughter. Unfortunately, he didn't take the news well. He said, "Really? That's fine." But I could tell by his tone he didn't like it. And afterward, he never talked to me again. You have no idea how tough it is to find a guy my age who's ready for a serious relationship. But that's what my daughter needs. It's lonely sometimes, but Olivia will always come first. By the way, my mom recently called me. She said she was sorry for throwing me out, but my dad was still mad and didn't want to see me. I told her, "I don't want to see him or you. You kicked me out when I needed you most. You aren't my parents anymore." Mom started crying, but I didn't want any more drama, so I hung up. A few days later, she came to my apartment building. I was stunned when I saw her on my doorstep, so I didn't resist when she took me into her arms and apologized over and over. Then Olivia came running out to see who was at the door. When she saw her, Mom said, "You're so cute. What's your name?" So many emotions flooded through me. All I could think about was everything I'd been through just because of my parents. Suddenly I screamed, "My daughter doesn't talk to strangers!" I pushed my mom away and smashed the door into her stupid face. I never want to see her again. My parents have always been heartless. They wanted me to do well in school, so they could brag to their friends about their successful daughter. But they never cared about what was best for me. I will raise my daughter differently, with love and compassion. I want her to be happy, not successful and miserable.
My little brother, Steven, is pretty cool. He's funny, caring, and my best friend in the whole wide world. However, he's also a bit different than most people. My mom already noticed that when we were kids. While I was constantly talking and making weird sounds, my brother didn't start talking until he was 4. The strange thing was that he started to speak in full sentences right from the start, and he only talked in movie quotes. Like one time when my brother was angry and told my mom, "Back off, Lieutenant!" I guess he heard that in some cartoon on TV. He also played with toys in his very own way. Instead of racing his cars, he would just line them up in a perfect straight line and get really upset if anyone touched them. Back then, I thought he didn't understand how to play with them, but now I know that his brain is just different than mine. Stephen was diagnosed with autism when he was 6, and autism is a lifelong disability that affects social interaction and communication. It's called a spectrum because some people are mildly autistic while others are severely autistic. I'd guess that my brother is somewhere in the middle, and you can immediately tell that he's not like other kids. He'll tell you all about the world he's building in Minecraft, and he doesn't notice when people get bored or don't understand what he's talking about. He also does this thing called stimming when he's stressed. Then he always rocks forward and backwards, shaking his hands. He also gets picked on at school because he's so different. That's why his teachers talked about putting him in a special school. But Mom wanted him to go to the same school as me. She says he won't learn how to fit in with normal people if he's only with other autistic kids all the time. When I see the other kids being mean to my brother, I stop it. I've even been in trouble for standing up to his bullies, but I don't care. They don't know what my brother's like. They only see his funny way of talking, his strange habits, things that make him stand out as different. It can be hard having a brother who's autistic. My parents have spent a lot of time and money on therapies for him, which doesn't leave much for me. It's hard for us to go out as a family because Stephen finds it hard to go to strange places. We tried to go to a movie once, but Stephen wouldn't stop screaming because the sound was too loud for him. Instead, we watch Netflix with popcorn at home now. But even though Stephen is never going to be like other people, he's still my brother, and I wouldn't change him for anything. When people get to really know him, they see his sense of humor and how he'd do anything to help someone. He might have a disability, but he's one of the nicest people I know. Nicer than many so-called normal people.